Welcome to the Vivid seminar on managing the complete application lifecycle. This webinar is brought to you by the Vivid Testing Quality and Application Lifecycle Management SIG, and my name is Doug Stone. I'm a chapter lead in Vivid in Melbourne. And next slide. So you all will be members of Vivid. This session will be available for viewing later, so feel free to come back and review it if there's things you missed or if you things you want to share or take away. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So today's presentation will be from Bruce Randall, who's the Director of Product Marketing for ALM and QC. Bruce is not just marketing, he has worked in technical and non-technical roles for quite a number of years and has over 10 years of experience in working with Agile and is a certified Scrum product owner. So today, next slide please. You'll see that on your screen, we'll see it on the next slide, there's a questions pane. So if you enter any questions that you have during the webinar, Bruce will answer those at the end of the webinar. And as I said, the webinar will be available for reviewing later. Next slide. So as you'll see there, this is the webinar control panel. You can type your questions down the bottom, and you'll see the questions. They may be answered also in that chat question chat section. If we're wanting more information. If you're not talking, then obviously your speaker should be and telephone should be muted. So now I'll hand it over to Bruce.
All right, thank you, Doug, and thank you all for joining today. I'm excited to be with you. Today, we wanted to talk a little bit about why applications and why the integrations that we're going to talk about between project and portfolio management and our application lifecycle management tools are so important. Part of it begins with the fact that now is more than any time in the history of IT, things are changing quicker than they've ever done before. If you look at the dynamic, you really have a business that is changing rapidly as well. And they recognize the importance of technology to that change. There are very few products that are being produced now, new products that are being produced, that in some form or fashion don't have a component of technology to them. Either there's technology that's used in the manufacturing and production systems, some of the back-end reporting systems, or maybe even within the products themselves. You take examples of automobiles and others that have, and when I say technology, even software technology has become more and more important. And especially with the advent of cloud technologies and mobile technologies that are literally becoming ubiquitous with most end users, whether they're business end users or even consumers, the rapid rate of software development, or the rate of software development has increased significantly. And if you look at the way IT is approaching things today, not a lot has changed for them in the sense that they're still very, it's difficult for them to get everything done as quickly as the business would like. They have to work weekends, and I'm sure many of you on the phone have spent this, have lived this before. you spend a lot of your time on back-end systems, and you're taking fire drills because the business wants things faster than they've ever had them before. Requirements are constantly changing, and part of that is because of the market itself is changing so rapidly for these technologies that the business, even though they may give you a great set of requirements initially, those requirements change. And then too often, we see that quality is one of those afterthoughts. And there are great examples, many great examples, that we can look at in the news almost daily of projects that were very big, had gone on a long time, quality was shoved into the last few weeks of the development cycle, and therefore you didn't have a high-quality release. So these huge projects are failing as often as they ever have. In fact, I'll show you a stat here in just a minute to talk a little bit about that. So it's a time of remarkable change for everyone in IT, as I mentioned. Now, if you look at some research that we've done here at HP, not only are there new requirements for technology, the existing technology even has new requirements. There are software products out there, commercially available software products even, that are releasing daily, sometimes even multiple times a day. And if you look at the research that we at HP did, we're seeing by next year, almost every single application that exists in your environment will release at least 36 times per year. That's pretty significant. And looking further out, again, this is based on research that we did with our customers, and looking even across the market to 2020, which is a mere short 6 years away, nearly 120 releases per application will occur. And so every environment, every IT environment, and every technology group needs to think about how this impacts their current processes and whether you can adapt to this rate of velocity that is occurring. Sorry, it looks like the slides are running a little bit behind, so I'll give a second for the screen to update. So the question then becomes, how does IT best adapt to these changes? The changes in the requirements, how quickly the requirements from the business are coming in for new or adapted technology, how often users are asking for new features, and then, of course, how you do all of this in a rapidly changing world where you are expected to work on the highest priorities. How do you ensure that you're working on the highest priorities? It's really the question becomes, how can you unleash the power of innovation? How can you reduce the amount of money you're spending on maintenance so that you can address many of these new requirements that are coming in? It's true, again, looking at some surveys that we've done recently, most IT groups do have the ability to free up more of their investment from the maintenance side and invest it into innovation, true innovation. If you look across corporations worldwide, again, this is actually some research that was not done by us, it was done by a third party looking across corporations. The average organization has about 70% of their IT spend on maintaining current applications that exist in their environment, which really only leaves 30% of their money, of their resources, to be able to do new things that the business is requiring. Now, if you look at some of the best-in-class IT shops, they've been able to move it up to 50%. And even look at a company like HP, where just a few years ago, we were spending nearly 80% of our entire IT budget on maintaining existing applications. And we went through a rationalization process and brought that number down significantly. We went from roughly 6,000 applications down to 2,000 applications. And the amount of money that we saved was in the billions of dollars. I'm looking back on publicly available statements that were made. Most organizations, as I talked about from the onset, are realizing how key technology is to their businesses. They can't run their businesses. They can't become more competitive. They can't become more profitable. They can't deliver the features and functionalities that their customers are demanding without software. And so software, and those of you I believe that are on the phone most of you probably have something to do with the software development lifecycle. What you're doing, the good news is, what you're doing is in higher demand now than it ever has been. And that demand will only increase over time. I want to talk about one final challenge before we start to address some of the solutions that we believe we have to help for this rapidly changing environment. And that final challenge is that the way that we develop today is also so different than it was before. If you look back even just a few years ago, you would have all of your development teams in the same place. Not just your development, but maybe your quality testing, maybe even your a lot of your end users, product managers, people would help to define what the product is. And now what you see is teams are distributed around the world. We used to have self-contained applications. You think of the big applications, you'd build the platform, you'd build the web services, you'd build all the pieces that you needed to make them work. And now most applications are built on a set of reusable services. In fact, I was pretty interested. My son is now taking a class at his school, a computer programming class. And of course, one of the first things he was interested in was building a new game. And I thought, being the older guy that I am, I guess, that he was going to build the game from scratch. But instead, what he did was he started with a tool where he could pull in different pieces of different games from one source. So he would open up this control panel, this source control panel, and he would pull different components into his game. This is very much the way we deliver any enterprise application, as you well know. Rarely do we build the entire thing. Instead, we take maybe a component from an open source vendor, another component we possibly build. And so these reusable services are becoming more and more important. And of course, we talked about the constant releases that move from an internal PC out to the cloud and out to the mobile. And it's possible you even have part of your services that are located in one of those areas in the cloud. So you're trying to build some of it on site that will be used on premise, calling a service that's in the cloud. And so it's become a lot more difficult to build and deliver applications. So with all of this, it's really not a surprise, as I mentioned earlier, that projects continue to fail. In fact, the failure rates, in spite of advents like Agile methodologies and so forth, the failure rates on projects have not really changed in the last years. A full 62% of projects fail to meet their goals for one reason or another. Either they're delivered late and over budget, or the wrong thing was delivered to begin with. And that's what defines failure in this particular survey. This was extracted from a CIO magazine survey that they did of corporations worldwide. So how can you then become successful? I've talked a lot about the problems. We heard about velocity, how that's changing things, virtualization, how that's changing things, the mobile environments, as well as things like the cloud. And then, of course, failure rates are really not changing. We do see, one of the major problems is that IT itself has yet to bridge many of the gaps that they need to. And if you look at the main components of a typical IT organization, some of them are not yet very well integrated. The strategy and planning group, who is focused on really investing in what matters most to the business, what's going to help them make the most money, what's going to help them be the most competitive, and so forth, which is not necessarily always interacting with the delivery teams who are delivering what they can, the best stuff that they can, and sometimes they're investing potentially in changes that maybe don't fit the most important investment profile for the business. And then the delivery teams are trying to deliver things faster and faster, which is hitting on the operations group, which has to support it. And so if the quality is not perfect when it's released, or even if it is, if the rate of release challenges the IT operations group to deliver more quickly, then certainly that creates conflict. So there's still quite a bit of conflict within these organizations. And so the answer, from our perspective, is to really look at managing the complete life cycle of the applications as one whole. It's true that there are different parts or business units within the IT organization that are potentially focused on one or more pieces of that life cycle. But it's very important to integrate these pieces. And for example, if you look at the top right, with the plan portion, within the planning area, you're thinking about what to invest in. That should be well integrated to what is being built to make sure that only the things that really matter to the business are getting into the development teams, are being tested, are utilizing those very key resources. And then likewise, only the things that really matter are getting built and delivered, and so the IT operations group is ready and willing to implement all of those new things that have just been released. Not only that, with a well-integrated life cycle, they also know what's coming down the pipe. They know it's going to be released in ample enough time for them to be able to prepare, as opposed to one day being told that they have to deploy multiple versions of the application into the environment. And of course today I'm talking specifically about an internal IT organization, or this view and the examples I've used so far, but this also applies to anyone producing software applications for an end user customer. You have the same problems of figuring out what it is you should invest in, what features to support for your end user customers, how to best build them and source them, and then how to get them out to your customers in the best way without overloading them. And you can see a number of products listed here. These are HP products. Many of you do own some HP product tools, and you can see the names of them here. I'm going to focus on a couple of areas here. The first is really how you better align your strategy and planning as well as your development organizations to deliver what matters most to the business. As I mentioned earlier, the strategy and planning group, their goal in life is to invest in what matters most, is to help the business, to help ensure that the business outcome is met. And when the Agile delivery teams really buy into the notion that they don't do anything unless it's been prioritized, then that means that they're working together. And ultimately, what we found is it also doesn't slow down the process of developing new features and new functionality to the market. It actually speeds it up long term. It also is better able to help the organization meet what its real goals are because everyone is focused on the right things. The bottlenecks within the organization are immediately fed up to senior management so they can decide if they want to invest in new resources, do some outsourcing to be able to fulfill some of those gaps. There's also a gap that needs to be filled, as we talked about, between the delivery teams and the IT operations group. I think the first gap that needs to be filled is to ensure that every release has high quality. And we at HP, of course, have been in the quality business longer than anybody. Many people have started their careers on the backs of HP tools in one way or another. So we know and we think we have best practices for how to produce quality applications. A lot of it involves automation, particularly handoffs out to the IT operations group. We're now seeing some customers worldwide who have a very integrated process between the operations group, who is delivering the software, really producing and standing up the software, and the development teams who are delivering it. We see great collaboration between them and a lot of automation, where the releases, the deployments are occurring almost in an automated fashion. But that's key to be able to bridge this gap we talked about. There's also a gap to bridge between the IT operations group and the strategy and planning group. Really, this comes down to effective change management. If you look at the IT of yesteryear, what happened was IT operations would get a call, there would be an escalation, and immediately they would contact the development teams to try and fix that escalation. Now what we're suggesting and what we've seen to help companies invest in the right things and really apply their limited resources to the things that will matter most to the business is that they analyze all change impacts, not only for collisions against other changes that may be in the system, but also to ensure that they really are the most important things. There are incidents that come in and calls that come in and things that are broken in software products that may not have the priority to fix right away. there may be other things that are even higher priority. And so being able to involve the strategy and planning group, which is capturing all demand, and the IT operations group, which captures a portion of the demand, bringing those two things together and automating the processes, the demand management and collaboration processes around resourcing is very key. So how do we do that? I'm going to step into a couple of products, and I apologize, I used acronyms right away. PPM refers to our Project and Portfolio Management Solution, and APM refers to our Application Portfolio Management Solution, which is actually a component of PPM. So if you look at how PPM itself and its sister, APM, assists within that life cycle, it actually is part of the entire life cycle. It's not only a component of planning and assessment where you do demand management and prioritization and portfolio management. It's also part of the project plan. Once you've decided what you want to invest in, you build out the project plan, and project and portfolio management helps you track it. It also has an integration out to release control, so you are able to stage the delivery of finished applications into the production environment. And then lastly, with our application portfolio management system, you're able to track the total cost of ownership and value of delivered software over time, so that you're able to assess whether the applications that you're delivering have value, how much they're costing you to deliver. In the case of internal applications, to be able to track over time really whether there's overlaps in business processes, whether the cost at one point or another outstrips the value, and so forth. So looking one further step here at these projects and portfolio management, application portfolio management, and showing where it fits within the life cycle, I'm adding in two more of our products as well. One, application lifecycle management. Some of you may use a version of that called Quality Center. And then Agile Manager, which is a new Agile project management system that we released specific for Agile development teams. And you can see there what their various functions might be within the application lifecycle. Now, I'm not going to focus on each of those bullets right now. Instead, we'll jump into it in just a minute. So if you look at what application portfolio management does, and this may be a new solution for many of you. Even if you own projects and portfolio management today, you may not be aware of our application portfolio management module of our project and portfolio management solution. I'll say that again. It's actually application portfolio management is a module of our projects and portfolio management, separately licensable module. We went out and built this literally because we saw a great need for corporations to, and enterprises and really organizations of all sizes to, they needed help to be able to address the costs of these legacy applications that were there in their environment. Most organizations we talked about earlier are spending roughly 70 to 80% of their total IT budget on maintaining existing applications. So the entire goal of this application portfolio management solution is to help them assess which applications may be worthy of getting rid of. And because it links into our HP PPM tool, any actions that are performed or that are desired based on the outcome of the assessment will be placed against the demands that are coming in from other places, so that a rationalization exercise, which takes resources and money to be able to get rid of one application, is being compared against other activities that that same group, those same resources, the same money may be able to fulfill. And we see a great demand for this worldwide, and our enterprise services group is even using it in many of their outsourcing engagements to help customers assess what applications they could get rid of. Then looking at our project and portfolio management solution and how it's important. What it does, one of the first things that it does is it captures demand, and I talked about that earlier. If you capture all demand and you categorize it by how it will support your business, by your business strategy, it's much easier to figure out what you should invest in and what you shouldn't. Now the next step is something we called portfolio management. And this is where you're prioritizing all of the work that could be done. You're using information from the demand management system. Let's say you get in a request for a new product, a new software product, and you know based on demand management system that that software product is going to support 2 of your major business goals over the next year. Well, that's kind of important for you to be able to assess. If you look at the picture there on your bottom right, you can see how we've laid out all of the potential demands against the business strategies that exist in your environment. And then the size of the bubble in this particular view is the cost of that project, what it might cost. And then you're able to assess. You can look at, and you see those on the far right, the middle and the far right, you see a resource and cost plan diagrams. You're able to assess, based on different slices of your portfolio, what you could support. On the example under the resource plan, it looks like you could support everything that you're currently invested in, but the yellow line represents everything in your demand, so everything that's being requested. It doesn't look like you quite have the resources to support everything until much later in the year. Of course, the data here is a little bit dated, but this is just a view. And then the cost plan is effectively the same thing. You could easily assess if a business unit wants you to do their projects, how much they might need to contribute in terms of resources and money to be able to make it happen. So I talked about once you've decided what it is that you need to invest in, the next step is to manage the projects and resources themselves. So this is where the project manager takes over and manages the day-to-day activities, manages the views that go up to upper management. And also we have an integration between our project and portfolio management and our application lifecycle management and quality center solutions, so that the project manager really has one place to be able to assess really what's happening with that project. So not only do you get money, how much you're spending, and a view on resources, you're also able to assess how well we're tracking against requirements, how well we're tracking against defects, and so forth. So that immediately the project manager should know, even if we're on time and on budget, but their defects are not trending in the right direction, we know that we're probably not going to hit our release dates, and probably not even going to hit budgets, because more is going to be invested in trying to fix those priority defects. So this is something that you can see directly within our project and portfolio management solution. So as I mentioned, we have an integration today which helps to resolve that first part of the life cycle between the strategy and planning, project and portfolio management, and then the development part of the life cycle through our ALM, application lifecycle management solution. And here's a view. Many of you may not be aware of this. This is a relatively new embedded view that we have within projects and portfolio management, showing what I just described, a project management view, the Gantt charts, the tasks and things that are still outstanding on the left side, along with things like defect trends views that are brought in from ALM and Quality Center into the right side, so that that project manager immediately can assess how they're doing against the requirements. And not only the requirements, but also against the defects. You can see, I'm building out that screen, you can see a few of the other types of information that we bring into projects and portfolio management from the application lifecycle management solution. And when I say application lifecycle management, we also, with the exception of the KPI scorecard at the bottom, we bring in the same information along the right, requirement status, open defects, priority defects from Quality Center into project and portfolio management. I mentioned that we have released a new tool. It's currently a SaaS-based solution, and it's a very, very important and growing software solution for us around managing of Agile projects. If you're not aware of HP Agile Manager, you can go to our website and be able to download a trial version and be able to access the entire product for a limited amount of time and users. Now, Agile Manager, as I mentioned, is a tool that is specifically geared towards supporting the needs of the Agile teams, supporting their day-to-day activities, tracking their tasks, tracking their user stories, prioritizing user stories, and so forth. Now, what we've done is we've integrated what happens in the Agile Manager product with the project and portfolio management tool. And the reason is the number one concern that we've heard from our enterprise customers about their Agile environments today is that they lose visibility into what's going on. They lose how much is being spent, they lose what effort is there, and they also lose, many times, the ability to influence the outcome of those projects because it's too late. They find out too late that something's going wrong, and it's very difficult to change. So integrating project and portfolio management together, what we do is we bring the best of both worlds. We bring the ability to see all of the project, not just the Agile components. If you think about every project that we implement, whether internal IT or external, there are waterfall or traditional components as well as Agile components to that project. The Agile development methodology is maybe just focused, like I said, on the development team. But there's marketing, there's sales training, there's, or maybe not sales training, but there's some type of internal training that needs to occur. There are pieces, again, which are not Agile in nature. And so what happens is we bring all the components of that project into project and portfolio management to be able to give your executives, your management, one view into everything that's going on with every one of their projects, whether waterfall or Agile. There's a number of examples that I could point to. If you look at the APJ region, there are some great customers. Deloitte of Australia is one great example that has integrated project and portfolio management and Quality Center and ALM together. And these tools, as I mentioned, what it does is it helps to solve that first part of the application lifecycle problem, where the development teams are investing in things without really knowing whether they're the priority things or not. What I haven't talked about today is that there's also an integration between project and portfolio management and our service management and IT operations products, which will give the other view, the support that is required in change management to ensure that you're making changes that are really the priority changes. We recently did a study around our project and portfolio management solution to understand how much value our customers were getting from it. And what we found on average, within 1 year, our customers were getting a 6.5% return on their investment. So that's after all of their costs, the implementation costs, the licensing costs, the even the administration costs of the tool. We found that those, on average, they were returning not only the cost, but a percentage beyond. So I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of customers worldwide, and I've found over and over again that the benefit that they get and be able to track their total demand, to be sure they're not investing in things that don't matter to the business, that the return on investment is huge, and this is something we've seen more and more often. And you can see a couple of other metrics that are given here. And this entire study, it's produced in the benchmark study that's available to you on our website. Just a quick little note from IDC, as they talked about our HP's IT project and portfolio management tools. And a lot of it, the differentiation is exactly as I described. Not only do we do full portfolio, application portfolio, project, resource management, financial management, we also combine it to integrate the entire life cycle. So we integrate to our application life cycle and Quality Center solutions, into our IT operations products, UCMDB as well as Service Manager, to be able to integrate the entire life cycle into one place. And really help you to solve many of the siloed challenges that are holding up the velocity of releases and even impacting quality of the releases at the end of the day. We have roughly 1,300 customers worldwide for HP projects and portfolio management. So that's a pretty good number of customers, and these are enterprise-level, large customers in many cases. There are a lot of customers throughout Asia as well that I've spoken with and that have spoken at various shows and have derived significant value from the usage of the tool. So I think, Doug, that's really the end of the presentation. I'd be happy to take some questions now, if anyone has any.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions here, Bruce, and thank you for your presentation. Now, if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to type them in and we'll get to them. So the first question is, can you talk more about what Agile Manager does and how it integrates to PPM?
Sure. So Agile Manager is, as I mentioned, it is centralized support of the Agile development teams. So what it does first is it provides a platform for them to automate what has often been in an Agile world a non-automated process. So things like capturing user stories. It provides a place where you can capture the user stories, to filter the user stories, to assign the user stories to various developers. And then if a user story needs tasks, of course, it allows you to create and assign those tasks. Provides a forum for a Scrum Master, for example, to be able to have daily stand-up meetings and also to be able to capture the work that is being done. It has integrations to a couple of different things. It integrates on one hand to development tools directly so that the developer can immediately input work that has been done and also capture any defects that are occurring against the user stories. This also integrates up to our application lifecycle and quality center solutions. So you're able to track across all of your organization quality metrics. You're able to use the same same test management framework against Agile projects that you do against regular projects. We're able to synchronize requirements. So potentially you have a business requirement which then becomes a set of user stories within Agile Manager, and you're able to track that user requirement throughout. So we provide full traceability from the developer themselves all the way out to the requirement, and when integrated to PPM, even up to the original demand for the requirement. So I hope that helps. Again, there's a lot to it. It supports Kanban. It supports various flavors of the Agile methodology, not just Scrum. And that's available for a trial, as I mentioned, on our website today.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Another question, can you elaborate more on how PPM integrates with Quality Center?
Sure. So there's a couple of different pieces. I mentioned that it integrates with Quality Center and ALM. And with Quality Center and ALM both, I'll tell you where they're different, but I'll start with where they're similar. With Quality Center, one of the pieces that it takes is the project gets linked up to a Quality Center project so that you have the same project number and ID within both systems. It also helps you manage changes. So as requests for new development or changes occurs, then that actually pushes back into project and portfolio management. And if it hits a certain threshold in terms of number of hours or amount of money it's going to cost to make that change, then it can go through the regular prioritization process with everything else in PPM. I mentioned also the next piece is that we integrate dashboards directly out of Quality Center and ALM to be able to help the project managers understand the status of any project. So if you have an ongoing enhancement, let's say, to your SAP environment, then you're able to, you as a project manager, would be able to capture not only how much it's costing, what resources are being focused on it, whether you're on track through those metrics, but also defects, how you're meeting your business or even your quality and test requirements, those sort of trends over time. Where it's different is the one place I mentioned earlier between Quality Center and ALM. There's an ALM dashboard that is only available in ALM. That is also integrated directly into PPM so that you get a direct view of that. Otherwise, the integrations are exactly the same. That's a general overview. It supports both existing, I'll say existing products or existing applications through the change management process, but also helps support new applications that are being built out.
Okay, yeah. So another question here, how does PPM help in prioritizing investments and resources?
So I showed one picture earlier about how PPM does this. What it does, first of all, is capture all demand. So there's a view on everything that could be invested in, both changes as well as net new projects, even ideas. They don't even have to be IT related. We have another number of companies that are actually using this to prioritize investments in anything. An Asian company even helps them to invest in, helps them decide where to invest money in branches, bank branches, as an example. So, it's not just IT focused. You can capture any type of demand or any idea. Once the ideas are within the system, they're categorized by the type of a goal that it would support or business strategy. And then they're also categorized by the amount of money it would spend and the types of resources that are necessary. We have a couple of ways to help you prioritize. One is an automated fashion where literally you can let the system run. You can put in your variables to help it determine which are the most important or best projects for you to invest in. And it will do it all automated. Usually it doesn't work for most organizations because you don't run a portfolio management process that's 100% based on the best return on investment. Sometimes you have to consider which business unit is asking for it, or which executive, or whether a particular business unit has decided to offer in more money than another. So there are certain projects that you may absolutely have to take. And so, even the automated system allows you to say, within these thresholds, it has to have more than a 20% ROI, be supporting, at least 2 of our business strategies, cost less than X, be less than 6 months time in development, and this project, this particular project. So you're able to sort and filter. And then I showed you a couple of pictures in one of the slides earlier where you can look at everything that's in your portfolio and see if you have enough resources for them. And it's the resource management console or component of the prioritization is not just whether you have people, it's whether you have the right skills in your environment to be able to build those things. So even though you may have plenty of people to do these, you may not have enough of the right skill to be able to do every one of the projects. And so that's clearly pointed out as well within this portfolio management solution that we have.
Okay, Bruce, just on that question, if I can ask one of my own, you talked about the automated approach to prioritizing projects, and the question of who's asking for it. Does a tool, or does PPM allow businesses or organizations to get around those often legal reasons for spending the money, so they can have a discussion on what is the real business value in making an expenditure, as opposed to just who is the loudest voice at the table?
Yeah, and in fact, what we've seen from our customers worldwide is that the value in doing portfolio management is exactly that. The loudest voice no longer wins every time. We have customers, in fact, a customer there in Australia where you are, that they put up a return on investment, well, excuse me, they do portfolio management, which includes return on investment metrics, and they'll prioritize based on these metrics, but then they make someone accountable to ensure that these things happen over time. So they're really managing and they're governing at a couple ends of the process. They're governing to ensure that you really do your work on before you put in an idea that you really think deserves investment, that you're putting in enough effort and enough thought to make sure that it's an idea worthwhile. And then they're also making you accountable, so that it's not just the person that screams loudest that thinks they have a good idea. That person that screams loudest that thinks they have a good idea will be accountable for the results as well. So they've been able to put metrics and governance in place to ensure that sort of thing happens. Yeah, it's very difficult for people to disagree when IT puts up a dashboard that says we are overcommitted, and here's how we're overcommitted. Look at this. It shows you're overcommitted in money. It shows you're overcommitted in resources. And then it's a lot easier to bring the business units to the table and say, what can we trade off? Or if we can't trade anything off, then we're going to need additional investment, so that the discussion becomes a lot less opinionated based and much more fact-based.
Okay, good. All right, one final question. How does HP ALM and HP PPM work in heterogeneous environments where one may have rational team concert or Foundation Server or other tools besides those from HP?
Yeah. So we've seen integrations many times between both systems and other tools. I'll take the PPM one first. So PPM is, we've seen it integrated with various quality and application lifecycle management tools that exist out there as well. And you can get many of the same benefits. The only difference is when HP provides both tools, the ALM Quality Center and the PPM tools together, then it's an integration methodology that we support. So it's one that we'll continue to upgrade and one that we provide for free out of box. Whereas if you're doing it with a third-party tool, it's one that you have to maintain yourself. But we do see customers absolutely integrating those things together. And really the same thing's true on the ALM side. We see some customers, maybe they've decided they're, for legacy reasons, they're capturing their requirements in doors, and they'd like to use application lifecycle management or quality center for everything else they do around test management. And we're able to integrate the requirements from doors into quality center so that you get that full traceability. Again, that's not an integration that we provide out of box, free of charge, but it is an integration that we're able to, and we've seen customers do it before.
Okay, that's the end of our questions now. You've got a few minutes to type in questions if you still have one, but whilst we're doing that, I'd just like to remind you at the end of the session that when you leave the session you'll be asked to answer some questions. I'd really encourage you to do that because that's what helps Vivid improve the quality and content of their sessions to make it useful and relevant to us all. So I'd like to thank, at this stage, thank all the attendees for putting up with myself and for listening, taking the time to listen to Bruce. I'd also like to thank Bruce for his presentation, which certainly made me think about some issues and organisations that I deal with, and how those products could be of benefit to them. So thank you, Bruce. Now there are no more questions coming through, so at this point we will wrap it up. But just before that, I'd like to announce, I'm pleased to announce that there's a 50% voucher when you do that, fill out the questionnaire. There's 50% voucher if you opt in to be contacted by HP. So there is some incentive there to do that. Sorry, $50. I think I'm actually getting some. Here we go. I'm getting some more information through. It's a $50 Amazon voucher, so even better still. If you fill in the questions and select the box, select the one that says choose to be contacted by HP, you'll get a $50 Amazon voucher. So well worth the effort and time. Thank you, Bruce.
Yes, thank you all. Appreciate you attending today.
Okay, that's the end of our session. Thank you.